Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Spotlight on Humanities in Higher Education grant program offered by the National Endowment for the Humanities. I'm Rebecca Boggs, a program officer in the Division of Education Programs and part of the leadership team for the Spotlight program. This webinar is recorded and will roughly follow the program page where you clicked the link to start this video, and especially the Notice of Funding opportunity, which we'll get to in a minute. Joining me today is my colleague Hannah, another member of our division who's on the Spotlight team.
Thanks, Rebecca. If you have additional questions after this webinar, please join us for a live Q&A session at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, July 31st. The link is posted in the Notice of Funding opportunity and on the program page just below this video. You can also reach out to us at any time through the program's email address, spotlight@neh.gov. There's a real person monitoring that inbox. Usually it's our colleague, Sarah, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. The draft deadline this year is August 20th. We can't review and comment on materials that we receive after that date, but if you send us something before then, we're happy to speak with you about it. You can send whatever you'd like feedback on. Some applicants send us a full draft, while others just a 2-sentence idea. You're not required to submit draft materials, but previous applicants have found it helpful, so please do. Hearing ideas at a preliminary stage is one of the most exciting parts of our job, and we really enjoy talking to potential applicants. So that's a quick overview of impending dates. Now back to Rebecca to hear more about the program.
Thanks. Before you begin your application, you'll want to know more about the grant program and about what the application requires. That's what we'll cover today. We will follow the steps on the program page, and most of our time will be spent on step 1, which you'll see just below this video. Before we get to that first step, though, you'll see a basic summary of the grant program. As with all NEH grant programs, your proposal should present a project that meets the requirements of the particular grant program. On the left side of the program page, just below the name of the grant, is a description of what this grant program aims to do. In general, the Spotlight program supports small projects that help students from underserved populations gain access to and benefit from the humanities. 2 goals set this grant apart from other NEH awards. First, we designed this grant with the goal of supporting some institutions and faculty who haven't necessarily received much support from the NEH in the past. Second, the Spotlight program can support small projects. Your project should benefit the institution rather than merely your own individual research or teaching agenda, but you can work on a small scale with focus, even revising a single course or professional development for a small group of faculty. We offered this grant for the first time 2 years ago, and we have continued to make changes each cycle that focus our grant making. The biggest change this year is that we have further specified the kinds of institutions that are eligible to apply and that the projects will serve. As you see on this slide, if your institution is an accredited 2-year or 4-year college or university, it must enroll fewer than 10,000 undergraduate students, and it must belong to at least one of the following categories: community colleges, minority serving institutions, rural colleges and universities, or colleges and universities with more than 40% of students receiving Pell Grants. If your institution is a nonprofit or a state, local, or tribal government, you must explain how you will partner with one or more eligible colleges or universities. You'll do this as part of the application narrative, and you'll also submit an attachment that will list your partner institutions and show how they meet eligibility criteria, or if you haven't selected them yet, to explain how you will select project partners and ensure that they meet eligibility criteria. A quick word on how to check whether an institution is eligible. You should consult the NCES College Navigator to determine the undergraduate enrollment, locale, and percentage of Pell Grant recipients, and the Department of Education's eligibility matrix to determine MSI, Minority Serving Institution status. You'll find specific guidance in our NOFO section C1, eligible applicants, as well as in our FAQ document, which has screenshots from College Navigator to help show you where to look for the relevant information, just like what you're seeing here. campus setting and enrollment in those circles at the top, percentages of Pell Grants in the financial aid dropdown using either the full-time beginning undergraduate student or all undergraduate student numbers, as well as giving you details on exactly where to look within that eligibility matrix Excel file that you can access through the Department of Ed website. If you're the project director heading the project, make sure that you're affiliated with and submitting it through an eligible institution of higher education or nonprofit organization. You cannot apply for this grant as an individual. The institution is the applicant, not you. The applicant institution must make a substantial contribution to the project. If your institution simply distributes the money to others, then you would be considered a fiscal agent and wouldn't be eligible. Foreign and for-profit entities are also ineligible to apply. If you have any questions, you can always send them to us at spotlight@neh.gov. You'll reach a program analyst in the Division of Education Programs, and even if your institution or your project idea isn't quite right for Spotlight, we'd be happy to help you find a grant that's the right fit. For example, in our Humanities Initiatives program, we welcome all kinds of accredited higher ed institutions to propose projects to strengthen teaching and learning in the humanities, whether those projects are smaller and take a year or two, or larger and need up to 3 years. Similarly, our Humanities Connections grants, which support curricular change where humanities and non-humanities faculty collaborate, have a 1-year planning level or an implementation level of up to 3 years. You can read about these and other opportunities across the agency, such as the Preservation Assistance grants for smaller institutions or individual research grants, or grants from your specific state or jurisdictional humanities council in Section H of our NOFO or under the Grants tab at neh.gov. If your institution and project idea do make Spotlight an appropriate choice, the rest of this video will help you get started on your application. On the right side of the program page, you'll find the grant snapshot. As you can see, this program includes 2 funding levels. Exploration projects are up to $30,000. The grant lasts up to 1 year. Development projects are up to $60,000 for 2 years. I'll say more about these 2 funding levels in just a moment. So in that grant snapshot, you'll see all of the key information, including the optional draft deadline that was mentioned and the submission deadline. You'll see that applications this year are due October 1st. It's not required to send us that optional draft by August 20th, but many applicants do find it useful to do so. We'll turn now to step 1, which on the program page is just below this video. Starting from the bottom of this screenshot, you can see a list and basic information about all the awards we've funded. On the actual website, you would also find links to full sample narratives from past successful proposals at each of the 2 levels, beneath what's shown here. Above the list of projects is our frequently asked questions document. When you're ready to apply, you'll find the link to grants.gov under the application materials heading. But the most important document for you to consider is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, which we call the NOFO, or sometimes the Program Guidelines. In this PDF, you'll find the complete information about the grant, including instructions for writing the narrative and putting together the other materials that you'll need in order to apply. The rest of this webinar will focus on the NOFO. If you'd like to follow along, you can download the PDF on the program page at the link shown here. This webinar should not be a replacement for the NOFO, and we won't cover every single detail, but we will give an overview and will help you navigate the document to find what you need. Every NEH NOFO begins with an executive summary, which will include the information we just went over, including the purpose of the grant, the 2 levels, the deadlines, and the allowable project start dates. Below the executive summary, you'll find the table of contents. The first 3 sections of the NOFO tell you about the program. The 4th section tells you what you need in order to apply, including a table of items to make sure you've included everything you need for a complete application. And the 5th section tells you how your proposal will be reviewed. The NOFO's first section describes the purpose of the grant. This section repeats some of the language on the program page, and I'd like to expand a bit on the kinds of projects the Spotlight program supports, and particularly to highlight 3 phrases. First is that this is a grant from the Division of Education Programs at the National Endowment for the Humanities, And so your project must be centered on the teaching and study of the humanities. On the slide here is a quotation from the NEH's founding legislation, which is also available on our website. It provides a definition of the humanities, listing some of the areas that we generally consider humanities disciplines, including modern languages and humanistic social sciences like anthropology and sociology. The definition also mentions our diverse heritage, traditions, and history. It's up to you in your application to explain how your project relates to the humanities as understood by the NEH. Second is that the Spotlight program can support small projects. Some of our other grants primarily support major curricular revisions like a new minor or changes to a general education program. This grant aims to support smaller projects, which might be accomplished by just a few people within a year or two. You might create or revise a course or a set of courses or develop new teaching materials, support student research or experiential learning projects, organize shared reading programs or opportunities for faculty development. Think about what would most impact your campus. But you don't have to keep only within the limits of the campus. You may want to partner with organizations or groups in your community or engage in workforce preparation that aligns your humanities teaching with students' career or professional goals. And lastly, projects should help students from underserved populations gain access to and benefit from the humanities. Again, it's up to you to identify the groups that your project would have an impact on. And you should make sure that your project centers on enhancing the humanities at higher ed institutions that meet the Spotlight eligibility criteria that we outlined earlier. Once you've determined that your project is a good fit for Spotlight, your next decision is whether to apply at the exploration or development level. Which one you choose depends on the scope of the project, including how long you think it would take and how many people are involved. If you have not yet begun working on the project and you would use a Spotlight award to get started, you should apply at the exploration level. If you have taken steps, even small ones, to begin your project and you would use a Spotlight award to make additional progress, you should apply at the development level. Exploration projects are up to $30,000, have a period of performance up to 1 year, and support faculty, administrators, community members, and humanities nonprofit organizations in planning for a project that would significantly enrich humanities teaching and learning at colleges or universities. Development projects are up to $60,000 and have a period of performance of up to 2 years. They support divisions, departments, programs, and humanities nonprofit organizations in advancing a single well-defined project or one stage of a larger project. Neither level requires any prior work on this project or a prior grant. You don't have to have received an exploration grant in order to apply for a development grant. If you're unsure which level is best for you, please get in touch with us. We're happy to talk it through with you. On our Spotlight program page, you can see lists of everything we've funded at exploration and development levels during these past 2 years, as well as several sample narratives from funded proposals at each level. Projects at that exploration level for 1 year of funding can support that preliminary work on a humanities project that would benefit students. At this level, NEH has funded projects for faculty to work on developing a course in digital humanities at an HBCU in the South, and to revamp an online course in business writing and the humanities at a Hispanic serving university in Puerto Rico. Projects at the development level with up to 2 years of funding that advance a single well-designed project enriching teaching and learning of the humanities. We've funded a project to create open educational resources at a North Carolina community college, which would replace textbooks that some students had struggled to afford. Spotlight is also supporting a rural university's efforts to integrate the humanities into its sustainability science program, and an HBCU's work to develop a student-led podcast about literature and culture. These are just a few of the projects we've funded in the program's first 2 years. The sky's the limit for what you can put together to serve your communities and students' needs. And you can always reach out to us to share draft information or talk about your project ideas. When you've decided which level to apply for, it's time to start creating those separate parts of your application. I'll turn things over to my colleague Hannah to explain a bit more about them.
Thanks, Rebecca. We can turn back to the NOFO, where the next few pages provide details about eligibility and other requirements. I'd like to pick up again on page 9, where you'll see this table listing the required parts of the application. When reviewers see your proposal, they see it as a single PDF, but when you upload it, you'll do so in separate parts. This table looks slightly different from previous years, and we hope it's clearer. At the top are the attachments that you need to create before you apply. Attachment 1, which is your application narrative, and attachments 3 through 5 are required for all applicants. You'll need to include attachment 2 if you're a nonprofit or a state, local, and tribal government, and include attachments 6 through 9 only in particular circumstances. If you have a grants office or an office of sponsored research, they will help you with these parts, and if not, please reach out to us and we can assist you. Make sure to save these components as PDF files and be ready to upload them to grants.gov. The bottom section of the table lists the forms that you will complete in your grants.gov workspace. The one exception is the budget justification that will be attached as a PDF. So let's talk about what your proposal needs. I'll explain these parts individually, but remember that they should all work together. Think of your proposal as a unified argument for why your project deserves to be funded by NEH. Attachments 3 through 5 are somewhat self-explanatory. The work plan is your schedule for the grant period. You'll provide bios or resumes for the key personnel involved in the grant, and you'll include a letter of support from your institution or organization. The other attachment I'll describe in detail is the project narrative, but before I get to that, I want to point out the review criteria. This is listed on pages 28 through 29 of the Notice of Funding, and we recommend that you pay close attention since this is how peer reviewers and others at NEH will be asked to think about your proposal. The review criteria are grouped under 3 main headers: intellectual quality, design quality, institutional context, and benefit. Intellectual quality comes first because if your project isn't worth doing in terms of its intellectual significance, then it won't matter how organized you are or how many students it might affect. But if you do have a great intellectual focus for your project, you also have to combine that with a feasible design that can get the job done to benefit the humanities at your institution. The third criterion, institutional context and benefit, describes how reviewers will consider the match between your institution and this particular grant program. Make sure your narrative and attachments explain how the project will have a significant impact in helping students from underserved populations gain access to and benefit from the humanities. We want to know how your project will make a difference. Show us how it will improve humanities teaching and learning at the Spotlight eligible institution or institutions involved. In general, look at what's written in these review criteria and be sure that an intelligent reader will have strong, positive answers to how well your proposal addresses each of them. In the narrative, you'll address the review criteria, which is attachment 1 on the list that I showed you a moment ago. The narrative is the most important part of your application. After the cover page, this is the first thing that reviewers will see, and you should consider it your primary focus. The narrative must be 5 pages or fewer. It's okay to single space, but you cannot go on to a 6th page. Applications over the limit are removed from the pool as ineligible, so no matter how good your proposal is, we won't get a chance to see it. The whole narrative should be written so that a generalist audience could understand it, and you should carefully address or answer each of the items under each section header in turn: the humanities content and activities, the project personnel, institutional context and benefit. I won't go over each section, but I would encourage you to read carefully the descriptions in the NOFO. These are probably the most important pages since they tell you what reviewers will expect to see. And remember, you won't be in the room to explain yourself, so make sure your proposal makes the strongest case. You want to be strategic, be explicit, And of course, you want to be clear. There's one more part of your application that I want to mention briefly, and that's the research and related budget form. You'll find this out in your grants.gov workspace when applying. The page looks something like this screenshot. This form will automatically integrate into your application based on what you enter there. Because this is a government-wide form, be sure to read the guidelines in the NOFO about how exactly to fill it out. There's a lot of detail there, but don't let it overwhelm you. Many applicants find it helpful to reach out to their grants office for guidance. All projects are required to submit a budget justification to complement the budget form itself. And remember, this gets attached as part of that budget form. Be sure to title this file correctly and save it as a PDF to ensure that it successfully integrates into the application file that our reviewers will see. Finally, there are a few things that the Spotlight program cannot fund. You can find a more complete listing of funding restrictions on page 28 of the NOFO, but I want to caution you against some of the most common pitfalls we see. We cannot fund the promotion of a particular political, religious, or ideological point of view. Advocacy for a particular program of social or political action, or support of specific public policies or legislation. The NEH also cannot fund projects whose main focus falls outside of the humanities. We most often see this with projects that are focused on the creative arts. If your project is focused on the creation of art in any form, then you may want to be looking at the NEA rather than the NEH. And finally, we don't fund work on educational methods or standardized testing. We do, of course, fund work about teaching the humanities. That's the main goal. So if you're unsure whether your project runs into any of these restrictions, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. So now you know what to do to get started on your application. And here's a timeline of when to do it. I hope you can join us for a live Q&A on Wednesday, July 31st at 2 p.m. Eastern. You'll find a link to join the meeting on the program page and in the NOFO. You can send us a draft anytime before August 20th. Send it to us as an attachment. It can be a full draft or just a paragraph, whatever you would like to provide us to provide feedback on. And remember that final applications are due at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on October 1st. And we recommend submitting before then if you can, because you're going to submit the applications through grants.gov. So speaking of grants.gov, the very first thing you should do after watching this video is ensure that you have two important things. One, an active unique entity identifier, and two, current registrations and passwords for login.gov. You'll see an explanation and a link to check this on pages 26 through 27 of the NOFO. Registration in the System for Award Management, or SAM, can take up to a month to complete, so check on this straight away, especially if you are a first-time applicant or if your institution hasn't applied for federal funding recently. The NEH cannot grant deadline extensions for delayed registration. Your institutional grant administrator or other grant management or sponsored program staff at your institution are great contacts for guidance if you're not sure where to find this information or who to contact for access. If they can't help you, contact the Federal Services Desk and/or grants.gov directly using the contact information on page 33 of the NOFO and listed here. Once you're in grants.gov, be sure to select the appropriate package for the level that you intend to apply for so that your application is evaluated appropriately. That is, be sure to select the ASA prefix for exploration and the ASB prefix for development. Don't let these last two slides make you nervous. Since this is an institutional award, it's quite common that the person who writes the grant isn't the one who uploads it to the website. So as I mentioned, your grants office will help you with this step. So now that we've covered those technical details, we'll turn things back to Rebecca.
Thank you very much for watching this video. We hope that it has provided some insight into the Spotlight Grant Program. If you have further questions, we invite you to consult the Frequently Asked Questions or FAQs document, which you'll find on the program page. It's the first link under Program Resources, just below the link to download the NOFO. I also hope you will join us on July 31st for that live Q&A session about the program. You can also email questions to us either at the program address spotlight@neh.gov, or you may email me directly at the address here. And don't forget, as with most NEH grants, you can send us a draft in advance, and this year's draft deadline is August 20th. Thank you again, and we look forward to hearing from you.